Hi, I'm Tom Doctoroff, the CEO for JWT in Greater China. Welcome to ITV's Advertising and Marketing program. Today I have the distinct pleasure of introducing a good friend of mine, but also one of the bright lights of the advertising industry, Donald Chan. Donald, can you quickly introduce yourself?
Oh, hi, I'm Donald Chan from Liu Burnett. I'm Managing Director of Liu Burnett China. Nice to meet you all.
Actually, we just did another chat, okay, and when we were segmenting with a financial individual in terms of revenue, advertising agencies into top tier and not the top tier, right. Leo Burnett was one of the very few that had entered the top tier in his esteemed opinion. So I just want to ask a little bit about how long you've been in China and the state of Leo Burnett when you took on that challenge and where it is today.
I came to China 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
At that point of time, collectively in China, we have about 120 people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not allowed to discuss revenue, but I can give you the size of the agency. Today, we have about 300 people on the ground in China.
Well, so it's a huge success. So basically, in a matter of 5 years, you've tripled the size of your business, or at least you've tripled the size of your staff.
That's correct.
So I don't mean to call you a magician or anything like that, but there are a lot of agencies that haven't had that type of growth. Well, how do you attribute that growth? Or more specifically, what does it take, generally speaking, for an advertising agency to succeed in the mainland?
I can't really comment on how other agencies succeed, but to us, I think it's a combination of good people, talented people. We have a very singular vision when we started the 5 years growth plan.
What was that vision?
To be very simple, we just want to be a Liu Burnett agency, a world-class Liu Burnett agency like the one in Chicago. Very simple. The way we motivate the people, whether they're from overseas or the people that are working for us in the mainland China, we want them to feel that you're not part of any nationalities. You're just part of a very good agency that are willing to do invest and deliver the world-class sort of advertising for our clients.
But I've heard many people in the industry say that China's not really ready for world-class creative product. China's not really ready for even world-class strategy, because the market is so new. Do you agree that good creative and good strategy isn't so fundamental what being a marketing consultant is?
I disagree to the fact that the market is not ready for it, but however, it's depending on how you judge it. This market, I think there's a lot of universal attitudes from the consumers in terms of the way they look at brands or the way they consume the products, but however, the value is very different because of stage of development, because of the culture of this market. But
can you just give me an example of what you mean by that?
For instance, let's say the attitude of seeking freedom, the attitude of seeking confidence. I don't think that's different. Let's say the teenagers' profile is different than any parts of the world, but the expression of freedom and the understanding of the values behind freedom might be different.
So it might not be so, just for example, rebellious or something like that.
Yes, something like that. But however, because of the competitions, be it from local domestic enterprises as well from multinational brands, I don't think marketers here are in any way rejecting better or more innovative creative solutions to their marketing communications. They still want to make sure that their voices are heard and the messages get through.
Let's talk a little bit about your thoughts as a manager, as a leader of an advertising agency. I've always thought that the biggest challenge is that this is a very abstract field. You have to get people to express their point of view. You have to get people to think on a lateral level, when in fact I find that sometimes people here tend to be more comfortable with the sure and the quantifiable. Do you find that getting people to express a point of view, either creatively or strategically, is an issue?
Naturally, I think Chinese are a bit more reserved.
But you're not like that, right?
I have Western education. But however, if you talk about, I think the motivation, the inner motivation to express themselves maybe takes a bit longer they'll be more reserved. But however, I think in terms of ideations, in terms of thoughts, in terms of their perception to certain things. Chinese are very perceptive, and they're very smart. So I think if you can strike a genuine dialogue with, for instance, people within our agencies, and create an environment that's motivating enough, they're more than willing to tell them what's in their mind.
Correct me if I'm, I mean, not, or don't answer this if this is too specific a question, but when you talk about liberating or encouraging their expression or establishing a true dialogue or motivating, is there anything that you've learned about how better to do that instead of just saying express yourself?
I think first of all, two things. You have to give them an impression, and you have to put it in practice that you are willing to listen to them patiently. It might come slowly. And second of all is you have to talk to them in exchange. You have to let them know what's on your mind and seek for their opinion. I think in a lot of, I hate to put it this way, in a lot of traditional Chinese sort of hierarchy, people are very, very reluctant to express their opinion. They just take the directives from the person above the level or from the person at the top, and they just go run with it. They're not trained to say, do you have an opinion about this directive or directions? But then I think in an environment, if we create the fact that, first of all, you let them know you're willing to listen to them, you tell them, you express yourself in a way, but also seeking for opinion, I think that will help them to express their thoughts.
So it's a question of having an open heart and letting them know that you're accessible as a leader?
Yes.
What about local versus multinational clients? Do you have more local clients, or do you have multinational clients, or both, or what percentage? How does it break out?
Well, at the moment, we are still very much skewed to multinational clients. That is not by any means of undermining local enterprises in terms of their business development as well as the potential in China market. It's just, I think, in the way in engaging, working with an advertising agency, a multinational agency like ourselves, they have more experience with working in agencies. So we can spend less time in getting the process alignments, but we can spend more time on focusing on the real issue, which is what's the better strategy and what's the better creative products that support the marketing needs.
Well, I know that one of your major local clients is in Beijing. It's called Li-Ning. Okay,
Yes.
Can you talk about that client a little bit, because it sounds like that's a huge success. You've managed that relationship fairly stably for many years. What makes Li-Ning differently, or how have you dealt with Li-Ning to make that stability possible?
Well, first of all,
what is Li-Ning first?
Yes, Li-Ning is the largest sports apparel brand in China as a local brand. They face very, very stiff competitions from Nike and Adidas. I think few things drive a very positive relationship between ourselves and Li-Ning. First of all, is the category they're competing in, which is sports fashions and sports apparel, which is targeted to the core of the younger generation.
So a more advertising-friendly category.
Yes, and more advertising-friendly, and the target profile that they're aiming for are very much open to a diversified cultures beyond just China, to Western values. So therefore, Li-Ning, if they want to stay competitive in this category, they need to look beyond what the conventional ways of doing things, or the conventional way of marketing things, or the conventional way of building a local Chinese brand. That's to begin with. Li-Ning himself, the company named after himself.
Who is he?
He's one of the most famous gymnasts.
Gymnasts. I think that would work, yeah.
A gymnast who is a very gold medal winner in 1984 Los Angeles. He's a national hero. And he, by nature, he has been competing in overseas, representing China. So he himself has also exposed it to, or in a more international arena, than rather than just purely looking at domestic point of views. And finally, Li-Ning has a very young organization. The CEO, the marketing directors, they are a bunch of very young, aggressive people. So with all that in mind, they're very open to work with the multinational agencies about ourselves in utilizing the best of what we can offer, which is international network, international resources, in helping them to formulate a strategy that could compete with the two sort of very strong international competitors, Nike and Adidas.
So you talk about using your international resources,
Yes.
So your global network, Libertad's
Yes.
global network.
Yes.
Does that imply that you think that some local brands, or at least the cutting-edge local brands, really do have a shot at becoming international brands? Can Li Ning go beyond China? And what about other brands in China?
I truly believe that a domestic or local Chinese brand could be an international brand. And that's part of the reason why I like this market so much, and I spend time in this market, and I don't have any plans to leave this market in foreseeable future. How to do that? I think, however, if you look at any track record, any domestic brand wants to go international, first of all, has to achieve success in the domestic territory, in the home market that they're competing with. They have to have the stable market share that could fund the economy for them to expand, starting from distribution to product innovations by getting overseas. However, as I said, I do believe there are very strong local brands in China that has a very strong position in the China market that are almost defensive. They are formidable to Western competitions. That once they have that stable market share, they can take themselves overboard.
But let's be sweeping generalists here. What is the state of local brands here in China in terms of how sophisticated these brands are in the China market? Are there any strong brands, Li Ning aside, of course, that you admire? Who are the real local Chinese brands right now that you think have active loyalty by the consumers as opposed to competing on price?
I think brands such as Lenovo. I think brands such as Haier.
Lenovo is
the local computer companies who also, I think they acquired IBM, the PC business from IBM about a year or 2 years ago.
I've heard some Chinese say that that's like the snake that swallows the elephant.
Yeah, well, one could say that, but I think from what I gather, they have been turning the PC business around with maybe better cost efficiencies and synergies after the merger. But I do believe these are the brands that actually have active loyalties, such as also Qingdao Beer. What would take them to the next level, especially expanding to international market, and that's also very going to be a critical point for the advertising industry in China. Is if we can finally search a unique Chinese voice that are internationally acceptable for these brands in China.
I see.
Going overseas.
How far into the future is that going to become a need? Let's just make sure I understand it. So you're basically saying how we can translate brands that are strong in the mainland, popular with Chinese consumers, but somehow twist that brand position to make it palatable or preferred amongst international consumers.
Yes. Or more so importantly is make the element of, let's say, some people say made in China, to create in China, to be aspired by the world. So I think the Chinese component, or after all, they are a Chinese brand, there's a Chinese DNA in these brands. We just have to unlock what this DNA is all about and make it globally appealing. For instance, American brands, a lot of brands rooted in the American brands have technological innovation as well as maybe a spirit of freedom. But that spirit of freedom has a universal appeal. So American brands such as Nike can travel abroad to a lot of other markets. I think we need to unlock certain DNA and characters of it being a Chinese and a Chinese brand that is internationally palatable.
I didn't mean to be so deep, okay, but is there an essence of Chineseness that can be unlocked and made exciting for the rest of the world? Is there something there? Sorry for asking such an abstract question. Yeah.
I believe so. It has manifested in different forms at the moment. For instance, Yao Ming in basketball.
What's going on with Yao Ming?
Liu Shang in Yao Ming, you don't know?
Oh, I've heard of him, yeah. but what's the essence of Chinese that gets unlocked?
Well, for instance, Chinese were perceived by the West maybe less athletic, developed, but however less strong, let's say, with less strength, less stamina. But you stack it up with Shaquille O'Neal being a center forward. Yao Ming has also won the battle being a center forward by being more agile, and more swift and quicker.
And cleverer.
So I think
makes us look like brutes, right?
I wouldn't possibly comment on that. But yeah, I think so. It manifests in different ways.
Let's talk about the advertising industry.
Sure.
Is it easy to succeed as an agency in China, or is it difficult?
I think it's difficult.
How many good advertising agencies would you say there are? Not specifically, but are most of them competing on price, or are most of them competing on quality?
I think there are only. I think there are a lot of agencies competing on price at the moment. That maybe it's because there hasn't been an agency truly establishing consistently what's the benchmark of good creative, and that benchmark good creative has been transformed into certain brands that have been successful in the market on an ongoing basis.
So there hasn't been some huge success stories for local brands that actually can elevate the whole standards of the industry and make people look to something. Do you think that it's going to get there? I mean,
I think that's my vision, at least to take a little bit at there. And I think there are a lot of respectable agencies, be it as multinational agencies or also local agencies, are also having that similar vision.
Local agencies?
As well, yes, I do think so. There are some local agencies has very strong vision to be the most professional, if not the most creative agency from mainland China. So.
I hear a lot, of course, and even at JWT we're pretty active in it, is this idea of diversification and integrated services. Is diversification and integration important in China, or is it still primarily a mass media market?
I think it's important with the proliferation of the media in China. Especially, I think this market is still very much a TV market in terms of creating awareness and maximize efficiency in terms of getting the reach you desire for. But as our consumers are getting more mobile and stable, and they have developed multiple media habits and sometimes simultaneous media habits, they can log on the computer at the same time, texting the SMS at the same time, maybe the TVs is on. I think diversification and also understanding the new medium opportunities that's available is critical.
I know that there's so many different new media or just non-above-the-line media. There's digital, there's what is called CRM, or Customer Response Management. Is that what it stands for? Customer Relationship Management. And there's PR, there's direct, there's graphics, there's promotions, there's promotion network. If you were advising an advertising agency in terms of diversification, what do you think is the most important media to get your hands on and control of?
I would say the space in the digital space. I would say the
How
digital
come?
space. As you look at the population growth of netizens in China,
how much is it right now, approximately?
I don't have the figure.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I don't have the top of my figure, but it's growing.
But it's big.
It's big. I think that's definitively is the space that we should really focus on.
So I don't mean to be asking any state secrets here, but is Leo Burnett actively developing its digital capability?
It is in our plan.
It's in your plan.
It is in our plan to truly leverage this opportunity and develop, again, a high standard of digital offerings, like the Leo Burnett agency stand for in the conventional agency.
And what about CRM?
Well, I think creating customer relationship or establishing a very direct connection with your customer is also important. But I think a lot of brands talk about, but however, you have to understand the nature of your business. And the application of CRM varies between different kind of businesses.
What do you mean? I don't quite.
For instance, if you're looking at a banking industry, you want to create loyalty with the customers so that you get the share of their savings or share of investment through your bank. And however, the population of a bank is huge. So chances are you need to do certain level of segmentations and different tactics to approach different level of customers for their different needs. Now, however, for luxurious brands where your natural target is very defined and your natural target base are very small, you may warrant a much more intimate, or if not direct communication with these customers on a one-on-one basis, because they represent very high value for you. They contribute very high margin to you. So the approach will be very different.
Speaking of luxury brands, that raises a question. Many people say that China is an exploding luxury market, and yet when I go to Plaza 66, nobody's shopping there. Tell me about the purchasing power, just in general, of the Chinese consumer. Is the China a mass consumer market yet, or is that still a promise for the future? Or does the market have critical mass, I should say?
Well, for most of the fast-moving consumer goods clients, they would say definitively this is a mass market. If you talk about luxurious goods, I think the purchasing power does varies with some of the cities within China. But I think at the end of the day, it's not entirely about just the purchasing power. It's I think Chinese consumers are smart.
What do you mean?
Now, we know the taxation in China for certain luxurious goods are particularly high, and recently they just increased the tariff of luxurious goods in China. So, whilst the consumer appreciate the value, the badge value, the status, and quality presented by some of the luxurious brands, they know they have a better alternative to get acquired for those brands, such as going to Hong Kong.
So that's why so many mainland people are going to Hong Kong.
I think that's one of the reasons.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons.
And regarding your acquisition diversification strategy, have you had any experience in actually buying companies?
I cannot discuss that.
Oh, you cannot discuss that even in the past?
Sorry. I cannot discuss that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I guess at WPP we are a little bit too talkative.
Because actually, off the record, we have a couple of things going on, so I cannot. It's kind of sensitive.
What would you guess, however, not in terms of specific objectives, but in terms of the negotiation process of acquisition targets? What do you think would be the main hurdle in terms of getting two people or two companies, a multinational company and a local company, to the wedding?
I think it's the alignment of the vision of what this potential joint, let's say, unit we're going forward in this market, and also a mutual understanding and embracing the common cultural values will be the biggest hurdle to get to really, local and multinational agencies working seamlessly together.
So on a personal level, can we just ask before closing, what have you found most satisfying about your China experience, 5 long years here, and what has been most frustrating as an ad man?
The most satisfying experience has to be the fact that this market just keep presenting you new opportunities. Opportunities that comes with geographic expansion, going to markets where are relatively underdeveloped before, but now getting more developed. In terms of diversification, we just talk about in medium, so getting from a conventional mass advertising model to now a totally integrated model where a lot of new mediums are presenting new challenges, but as well as opportunity for creative solutions. To simply this whole market is growing, becomes possibly an opportunity for us to help domestic brands to become one of the international
So just
brands.
the thrill of the dynamism.
Yes, that's just the most satisfying.
And so that sounds very optimistic. But is there anything that has been frustrating for you and continues to frustrate you?
The frustration comes from really the lack of time.
Well, that's
The lack of time.
nice thing.
Yeah, the lack of time to truly understand this market. A lot of people talk about they understand this market. I work on it 5 years, but I would not hesitate to tell anyone that I'm no expert of this market. Our job just occupies too much of a time to focus on the task at hand. But this market just has so much to learn, from the culture to the people. There's so many places you haven't been to. You can only see photos and pictures, or read about it. And just I think when you have such a passion and optimism for such a market, but you have so little time to really truly understand it, that's really an ongoing frustration for me.
Well, it sounds like you are very passionate about the China market, very optimistic about its long-term future, and ready to ride the rapids to the shining city on a hill. So thank you very much for your time, Donald. I'm Tom Doctoroff with ITV-Asia, and I'd like to once again to thank our guest, Donald Chan, the China head, but your formal title is?
National Managing Director.
National Managing Director
China.
of Leobernet China, Donald Chan. So thanks a lot for coming
Tom.
on in. All right.
Thanks.